Here we go. Chiro Gold interview with Dr. Joe Strauss, and we're on today principle number 8 as we go through these principles. And it's just so exciting to be able to get into these each week and learn more about what makes our profession unique, our profession special, and what really is the foundation for our whole existence as a profession. So very valuable, very grateful that Dr. Joe takes the time to go through these with us and help us to have a better understanding of these. And today we're going to be covering principle number 8, which is the function of intelligence. And I'll go ahead and just read the principle as it's written here by Stevenson, and then we'll get some of your thoughts, Dr. Joe, on principle 8. So principle 8 is the function of intelligence. Everything in the universe has a purpose. That purpose is its function. Intelligence is in the universe, therefore it has a function. It is evident that the function of intelligence is to think. Thinking is the origin of force. Creating is the thinking or unfolding of thoughts. The force of thought is the greatest of all forces, for it is really the fundamental of all engines, of all energies, of all dynamics. So there we go, principle number 8. Any opening thoughts?
Well, I guess we could actually go back at this particular point and really address the issue of God and universal intelligence, if we wanted to, and the very fact that it is a creation and is created by intelligence. Then, if we want to say that God is intelligent, and I think that most people would agree with that. He's sure more intelligent than me, but God is created by intelligence. He has a will, which is part of his intelligence or a manifestation of his intelligence, and that will was to create something, create force. So that makes force a creation of God rather than being synonymous with God. And of course, we would say.
Are you saying it makes force or intelligence? Is intelligence a creation of God or force?
Well, if we want to say that intelligence existed as God, and I think that in the Christian belief that intelligence exists, God existed prior to intelligence.
Yes.
So God couldn't be considered synonymous with intelligence, but but as a creation, that was something that God created. It was a creation of God, so that it existed after God existed, and of course, in this Christian belief, or in actually Judeo-Christian belief, that existence was something that was created after God, and that it was a creation of God, which means it existed after God. And God, of course, in Judeo-Christian is eternal and had no beginning and no end, where a creation is something that had a beginning, and so that God then.
I think our big hang up that we've talked about before in chiropractic is a lot of chiropractors use God and universal intelligence as synonyms. And we've discussed in previous videos that is not the case if we look at it from this standpoint here.
Yeah, I think that principle number 7 or 8, where we are now, it says the function of intelligence, if you're saying that intelligence is God, is to create force. So force cannot, as a creation of intelligence, it can't be the same. God cannot create himself. So force and our principles then we would say are a creation of God, something that occurred after God. In other words, God existed prior to the creation of force. At some point, in some point in the scheme of things, God created force, and
force, again, just for people who maybe have just seen this as the first video, is the binding substance, we might say, the thing that's keeping everything together.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's what that's what in the chiropractic philosophy, that's exactly what we say, that force is what binds us together. And of course, in the Judeo-Christian belief that that God existed prior to and apart from force, that was just a creation of God, that he decided at some point in time, or at some point in eternity past, to create things. And that first creation, of course, was force. And well, his time was created, but we've already discussed time before, so we won't go back over that again. But that pretty much was the beginning of God's creation, and I think they were probably all done synonymously. But God existed prior to that. He existed outside of time, and he existed prior to the creation of time and force and mankind and everything else that he created. So I think that really pretty much clears up the fact that God and universal intelligence are not the same thing. And know God and force are not the same thing, that because they are a creation and something create itself. So there has to be God had to have existed prior to any aspect of his creation, including time, the earth, and man and force and everything else that has been created. If we want to say that God created those things, but he didn't create himself. Nothing can create itself.
Right. Maybe like saying the painting created the painter.
Right.
Wouldn't make any sense.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's
now,
exactly.
Go ahead. Oh,
so anyway, that we say the number 8, the function of intelligence is to create force. And I think even if someone wants to say that God was is synonymous with universal intelligence, they would have to say that the creation of force is not God or God and man. That is something that exists apart from God. God existed prior to any aspects of his creation. In other words, he existed in Judeo-Christian belief. He existed prior to the creation of anything else, and and that's where I think that's where I personally come from, which I feel kind of goes along with, or does not contradict my my Judeo-Christian beliefs, and I think it is compatible with those that belief.
Oh, absolutely. On a quick little side note, this is not chiropractic, so here's a disclaimer. This is not chiropractic, but I was talking to someone about evolution and all these things that are being taught in school, and the Christian starts with God, that God created everything, and the evolutionist starts with nothing, that we came from nothing, and then there was an explosion of nothing that all of a sudden created everything. And the evolutionist will ask the Christian, well, where did God come from? And we don't know. But if you ask them, well, where did this nothing come from, or this initial rock come from? They don't know either. So I think it's just they need to realize that what they're believing in is also a religion, but ours makes a lot more sense. So.
Yeah. From remember we discussed this in a philosophy class once, and of course we got into the Big Bang theory and all that. And
Right.
I had an African student who was from Africa, and he didn't really speak a whole lot of English, but I remember he must have had a Judeo-Christian background, because he said, well, that when we talk about the Big Bang, which is a funny show from what I
Yeah.
understand, but I don't think it's biblically correct.
No.
And the student, he said, well, who banged the bang?
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
I used that many times after that. He said, who banged the bang? He obviously said, well, if there was a Big Bang, God created the Big Bang.
Yeah. Right. Right. Great. Okay. So back to principle 8. I mean, this is such a great principle because, like you said, I think this is what more than anything does separate that what we do as chiropractors is not a religion. Me personally, I'll speak for myself for a second here because I think of everything that I do is in a way to serve God. So for me, chiropractic is a way to serve God, but it's not a religion at the same time. But if you're a plumber, you can serve God that way too. It doesn't matter what you do. We're all always serving God. So I don't want us to convey the impression that we're trying to keep God out of chiropractic in the general sense, because everything we do every single day is in a way serving God. But at the same time, it's not a religion. And I think that this points that out, because I do think we want to be smart about what we say in chiropractic and be accurate and not I don't know, not confuse things, and just present it as it is, because it's pretty great as it is.
Yeah, I think our concern is that we don't contradict chiropractic, and we don't contradict anybody's belief system.
Yeah.
Now, if you want to believe in evolution, then you have to explain where how everything began, and even the beginning of that television program, they still start out with something that existed, a one-cell animal, and then they kind of go
Right.
and make it into a man, and
Yeah.
then an
We have this
airplane.
idea that all of the matter in the universe condensed down to the size of a period on the size of your page of your book. All of the matter, and then it exploded. It's like, okay, whatever. All right. But
Yeah, I think that takes a little well, it takes a little more intelligence than I have to kind of draw that conclusion.
well, here's the
And
question for you. As a Christian, myself, and as you are, how did you in your office, because you're a proud Christian, you're not embarrassed of it, you're not shy about it. Um, did it ever come up in the office? Did you ever, I don't know, maybe for lack of a better word, incorporate it in your office? Was there ever talk of it in your office?
actually, I kind of begin with the idea that take for granted that's already established, because my belief was, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth.
Hmm.
And in fact, so by saying that, I had to reject the concept of evolution.
Wait, no, you
And
said you would say it in your office to people?
well, no, I don't think I don't know that I said it, but I just kind of sort of started with that as
Sure.
a as an understanding,
Hmm.
as a principle that was accepted by people.
Yeah.
And I don't believe I ever had anybody who challenged me
Yeah.
on uh, on that concept, because I think that, and of course, when chiropractic began uh, in 1895 in Davenport, Iowa, most people at that time accepted the idea that God, was the creator of things. And
Hmm.
I guess it was with 1920s when it was challenged in court, and that was the famous Scopes trial where this this teacher challenged it, and he actually lost his case in court, but somehow a lot of people have accepted that the theory of evolution. And of course, I was taught it in college,
Right.
and I had already accepted that in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, and so I rejected that concept. I just, of course, had to explain it as well as I could, and I in exams, because that's what I knew the teacher wanted.
Yeah.
So I explained that, and I passed the course, and got through my biology degree in chiropractic school, or in undergraduate school, and then and I kind of accepted the idea that God existed prior to, and then of course a few years ago I began to develop the idea that time and matter and force and all the aspects of our chiropractic philosophy, our chiropractic principles, were creations created by God, and they were a creation of God, and as a result, I could accept them. So now we're up to number 8 or 9, whatever it is, and we say, and we, in fact, Stevenson uses the amount of force created by intelligence is always 100% in principle number 9. So what he's saying here is that if intelligence is 100%, and then the force created by intelligence has to be 100% too. They're absolutes and they're perfect. And we say, well, we're still in universal intelligence, so that means existence in our concept of chiropractic philosophy, and is 100% intelligence, whether the body is a living or the body is dead. It's still 100%, because existence is what we're talking about.
Right.
I think Stevenson calls it universal life on the next page. Universal life, which principle number 14, I guess, is universal life, which is probably maybe a name of insurance company, but they stole that from the Stevenson.
Exactly.
That's existence, and that's what we say in existence. So matter continues to exist, whether it's existing as a living person, and then we describe the difference between that living person and a non-living person as something that manifests innate intelligence, or is innate matter, as opposed to universal matter, which just means existence. And of course, any object has existence, then there's no such thing as universal intelligence. It has universal intelligence. So even if it's a corpse and no longer has no longer expresses innate intelligence, it still has existence. It may be existed as a non-living body, but it still is in existence. We don't encourage the adjusting of.
That'd be weird.
Yeah. I think I may have mentioned once that I had a fellow who wanted to. He wanted to join a hospital and went to a chiropractor wanted to join a hospital, and he went there, and somebody had just died, and he wanted to give them adjustment. They said, no, you can't do that, and that's when he realized that he didn't really want to be a part of that.
Yeah, right. Now, what would you say to a chiropractor? Because we're reading through these, and up to this point now, we're still talking about universal life. And a chiropractor might be going, well, so what? What does this matter? You know, what's the point of this stuff, of learning about universal forces, or universal intelligence, learning about force? Why is this? Why do these first 9 or 10, principle 10 is just the function of force? So we've already discussed that's just the binding material that holds everything together. So what would you say to a chiropractor that kind of just goes, well, so what? What's the big point?
Yeah, I think that Stevenson is trying to build a a deductive process and deducing one principle from another,
Yeah.
and so he's trying to work that way, knowing that chiropractic is based upon reason and logic and deductive reasoning specifically. So that takes chiropractic out of the realm of a religion. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
if you say that universal intelligence is the same as God, then someone could charge you with practicing a religion, or claiming that you practice a religion. And I think that there was a fellow in the 1920s who decided to practice chiropractic that way, and he wanted to probably prevent chiropractic from being charged with a religion. He called it GPC. I don't know. You ever heard that
No,
term? It
no.
stood for God Patient Chiropractor.
Oh, okay.
His name was George Shears, and BJ uh, disagreed with him in that idea, and BJ said no, that it's not a religion. He thought that we could prevent, or at least go back to the freedom of religion
Mm,
clause of the
sure.
Constitution, and that chiropractic could practice it that way. And actually, I think Reggie changed that term to a cooperative fee system. Maybe that's more familiar with most people. But the system was originally called GPC, which stood for
Okay.
God and Chiropractor. And the patient would put in a bowl or in a box how they what they felt they could afford to pay. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, when I went into practice, sometime after I got into practice, I decided that might be a good way to practice, not because I was trying to call it a religion, or
Right.
not that I was trying to prevent the government from coming down on me with my fee system, but I just thought that was just a nice way to
Sure.
practice,
Right.
uh, and it kind of was kind of an interesting way of practicing, and I practiced that way, I guess, for 45 years, and which was really good in the beginning. In fact, I had a friend who practiced the same way, and then when insurance came in, because I started before there was such a thing as insurance,
Right.
he 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 went into insurance, and he said that well, you know, I can make more money with insurance than I can with the box on the wall, because the insurance company are going to pay for it. And I decided to stick with the original cooperative GPC
Right.
practice, and I stayed that way. Probably it was a little more difficult when they wouldn't when the insurance, because insurance companies once in a while insurance company would say, well, what is we need a fee, and I say, well, give me whatever you feels within your means to pay, and they kind of, I got silence at the other end of the phone when I was talking to them. And of course, I said, I know you insurance companies have all the money in the world, and but they weren't about to give me all the money in the world.
Well, you tried at least.
So I just continued with that system.
Right.
And I did all right. I made a living, and I saw a lot of people. I think we probably had thousands of people on our rolls that we saw. Some of them maybe could not have paid otherwise, and they had to if they hadn't had that fee system, and but I made a good living and a decent.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah, you made a good living, and you're helping out thousands of people, giving them excellent chiropractic care, something that's going to change their life, and you can feel good about that. So it's
yeah. I think Reg used to say to people when they asked him about it, he'd say, well, how long does it take you to adjust that person? And he'd say, well, most chiropractors would say just a couple minutes. And his response was, well, if you're spending 2 minutes adjusting your wife, and you're spending a lot more time with somebody else's wife, then maybe they got a problem.
Yeah. Yes.
But it was a little tough there sometime at some point, and there were times when I didn't make as much money as the guy who was building insurance companies, but I was satisfied that I was making a living and I was doing God's work, which was what that was my primary purpose, and I was giving chiropractic care to nobody was being kept from my office because of finances.
Right.
And I used to have the philosophy that, well, if people either put the money in the box, or God will drop it on the back step at the end of the day. But he never dropped on the back step, but he provided the money in the box, and
Yes.
and I was satisfied. And
Nice.
may have had to live a little bit lower than maybe a lot of chiropractors. I didn't make as much money as a lot of chiropractors, but I always had my needs met.
Well.
And
yeah, and your impact on the profession is going to be long lasting, in what you've accomplished in practice, but also outside of practice with your books. And so, there's a lot of ways we can measure success, and I think you measure up very well on the most important areas: your contribution to the profession, your contribution to the people in your community, and the lives you've been affected and impacted there. So, yeah, you got a lot to be proud of, and don't have to worry about how you measure up against anybody else. That's for sure.
Well, I don't have to measure up against anybody else. I guess I only have to measure up to God's standard, and as I'm meeting His standard on a day-by-day basis, then
there you go.
as much as I need to do. Yeah.
Yep.
So anyway, but I think the understanding that the 33 principles had given me more of an understanding of the rationale between of what we do as chiropractors, and I think that's the important thing. And again, it's because we don't see chiropractic as a belief system. Even though I think Reggie kind of tried to cover his bases with his spinology by calling it spinology, and by saying that it was, even though he never, when you talk to him, he would never say it was a religion, but I think he had that to fall back on, in case anybody ever came after him, that he could be protected by the freedom of speech, freedom of
Religion.
speech, and freedom of religion, uh, uh, part of the
Right.
U.S. Constitution. And in fact, I think one of his early spinology people, who is now a very well-known chiropractor who teaches at a chiropractic college, was one of his first spinology students. He was a chiropractor, and also, and I don't think he says too much the fact that he has a history of spinology, because he's a well-known chiropractor, and but he had that. I think he was one of the first people in the
Yeah. Right.
biology. So anyway, yeah,
So
that
with
was
these
my.
principles and the whole idea you're conveying there is just, this is, to the chiropractor who says, why is this stuff important, is it's building the foundation for what we do, but also it's just bringing things to this deductive process. And we're starting off with with universal forces, non-living things, and working ourselves up. And what I find interesting is when you read the principles here, obviously to this point, because we're all referring to universal life, but even as you read forward, it never, there's no talk about back pain. There's no talk about treating symptoms. There's no talk about anything. It's all about, eventually here, about life. And I think this is why it's important that we as chiropractors know where we come from, and that's going to help us to be better chiropractors now. If we see that our profession is built upon these principles, this deductive reasoning, and all of these things that lead to doing one thing, which is making adjustments to allow life to better express itself in a person's body, we can be better communicators, and just better chiropractors overall. So I just love the fact that as you read this, you start to see just how incredible this is. Because I guess Stevenson could have skipped the first and just jumped over to, signs of life or cause and effect, something like that. But I think it's brilliant that he started off with these principles of universal life to get us to eventually get us to those points down the road. So I think it's just,
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I think that he saw the wisdom in doing that, and I think that it has helped us to clearly develop our philosophy and
Mm-hmm.
base our philosophy on laws, principles, or laws that exist in all matter. And that's
Yeah.
how we start out. The first one, there is a universal intelligence in all matter, continually giving to all its properties and actions. If we see that as a principle, and see it as that universal intelligence being a principle that was created by God, if you will, then
Mm-hmm.
that clearly takes chiropractic out of the God equation, because
What's no different than the physicist who recognizes certain laws that are evident and then uses those to build their profession. And what they've discovered, they're starting with laws that were created by God and then applying those to everyday practices. It's like we do.
that,
We're taking a principle that was created by God and then applying it to our profession.
yeah, and those people who do that, that's why there's so many people in those fields of study that you just alluded to, that clearly separate the two and say,
Yeah.
This is physics, or this is biology, but I still believe in God, and
Mm-hmm.
join them together. And I think that that's what we attempt to do in chiropractic, to uh, get people to realize that we have a principle. It's made up of reason
Yeah.
and deductive reasoning and rationale, but it's based upon a Judeo-Christian concept that we have accepted as our starting point. And but when we leave after that, any rational person, a reasonable person, can say, well, that makes sense, even
Right.
though I'm an accountant or I'm a physicist, or they can still see
Well,
what
you even
rational.
think about the physicists, they work with a lot of things that you can't see, and they've created principles around things you can't see, just like we have here, but we don't deny that. We can deductively reason that what they're talking about is true based on certain principles. And so we have this we're kind of like physicists for the body, you know. Maybe not doesn't make sense, but you know what I mean. We in terms of our principles, we obviously work with innate intelligence. You can't see it, feel it, you really can't measure it, but we know it's there. And physicists, they work with a lot of things that you can't feel, see, touch, measure really either, but we accept what they do, that it's not a religion. So in that
Yeah,
sense, we're no different.
right. We just don't call ourselves physicians. At least
Oh
I
yeah,
don't.
I didn't even think about that.
Well, there's the people who want to call themselves chiropractic physicians, and
I know, I know.
I'm not. I never was very happy with that term at
No,
all.
it makes no sense.
Yeah. So anyway, that's where we are. So
Okay,
the
now
number that was a
that
that
was
was a
number
go
9
ahead.
and 10 there. Really, I mean, we've already discussed principle 10. It's pretty doesn't
I
really
think
require too much.
the bottom line of those is that we consider them um, creations of
Yeah,
God, and then we don't even attempt in chiropractic to define God. We leave that up to people in their own belief system. Now, to me, uh, some people believe that God is something else, but
right.
I accept the Judeo-Christian concept of God,
Yeah,
and that's where I start. But anybody can accept God however they want to define him, uh, or her, or whatever they want, however they want to define God. Uh, but uh, that's their religion,
yeah,
and that's not. And we, we accept you accept that God in any way you want. And I know there. I have a few chiropractic acquaintances, friends, I guess, uh, who uh, who are atheists,
huh.
and I don't know how they put that all together,
That's
uh,
tough.
but but they do. Somehow they do, and not too many in the chiropractic profession. Uh,
Right.
I guess they just don't try to go beyond uh, principle number one.
That's where it starts and stops.